Today I want to talk about intentional consumption. Now that's something I mention a lot in my videos because it's very important to me, and I think it's a super important part of being a minimalist and also trying to live a more sustainable life. But I don't think I've ever made a video dedicated to intentional consumption. So today in this video I have 5 rules for you to help you consume more intentionally and make sure that you can avoid unsustainable, too expensive impulse purchases that you will regret in the future. And to also ensure a sustainable use of your time, we will start with the first one right now. And this is think before you buy. And that sounds really easy, and it can be, but I think it is also really, really important. So to just break that impulse purchase, to break the cycle of I want something, I see something, I buy something, I think it makes sense to get into the habit of thinking before you buy. And I think that is exactly the moment to ask yourself some questions. So some of them would be, do I really need it? And if I don't need it, do I really want it? What are the times I'm going to use it, or why am I buying it? What is it going to give in my life? How is this item making my life better? Is this item worth the money? Think about how long you've worked to earn that money. Is it a sustainable purchase? Does it align with my values? Am I going to use it? Am I going to cherish it? Am I actually gonna get value out of this thing? And if these sound too complicated, we're gonna dive deeper into them in the next points. But I think it's just really, really important to take a step back there. And one thing you can do as well is write everything on a list you want to buy, and give yourself an actual period of time you have to wait and think before you can buy something. And to be honest, everything is kind of intertwined with everything else on this list, but let's go on to the rule number 2, and then you see what I mean. And so my second rule is think about the end of the life of the thing you want to buy. So think about decluttering that item. It's natural for everything that we buy that we at some point have to kind of use it up and discard of it. And for most things, if it's not zero waste package-free food, there will be some kind of waste involved. So when we buy a piece of clothing, we will, in the end, have to throw it into the garbage, recycling, sell it, give it away for free, bring it to a secondhand store, something like that. And I think really already thinking about what you have to do with that item once you cannot or don't want to use it anymore helps with the purchasing decision. Because it's going to be such a struggle to get rid of it again that you don't really even want to invite it. Now, the third rule also has to do with the rules I talked before, and that is develop some sort of criteria and values when it comes to purchasing an item. Now, that really helps with the first one of thinking and taking a step back. And it also has to do with getting rid of an item in the end as well. When I buy a new item, I do want to make sure that it is the most sustainable option that's available to me. So I try to make sure that the material, how it's made, is sustainable and ethical. The way I have to discard it in the end is the most sustainable possible, and that just the product itself is of such good quality that I can really use it up, that I can get my money's worth, and also kind of get a lot out of the resources that were used to create it. And then of course what's also really important if you're a minimalist is kind of thinking do I really, really need or want it? Because otherwise it's just surplus, it's just not intentional. And I do have to say that I think it's okay to not only own things that you absolutely need, but also things that you want to own. It is never a sustainable and ethical purchase if we buy something that we don't intend to also use many, many times and for a long time. But we are in a very consumerist world, so consumption is very natural for most of us. And I do think that there's kind of a loophole there, and that is buying things secondhand. While purchasing too many things is never sustainable and never a good idea, it at least does not really cause any harm if you do so secondhand, because there are more than enough secondhand things available. And if you want to try something out, then you can buy it secondhand, and then you don't really have the whole burden of responsibility on you. It's like not the same environmental and ethical impact that the item has, because it's not new anymore and it doesn't drive demand on the end of like the huge corporations and companies. And the next one again has to do with all of this, and it's rule number 4, which is do allow some space for experimentation, fun, deciding otherwise than you have in the past, and things like that. So while I think that intentional consumption does mean that you should think a lot about if you want or need something, and mostly kind of focus on the things you need and be very, very responsible for the things you buy, and think about how you need to declutter them in the end, I also do think that life is just unpredictable, and that you change and learn more about yourself, and your needs change and your lifestyle changes, and that it's absolutely okay to also just try out things, experience things, make mistakes, decide differently in the future. And so I do think we have to allow ourselves some sort of experimentation and room to change and play kind of with things. But if I leave it at that, that would mean that you can just consume as much as you want. You don't have to think about it. You can always decide differently, and there's not much intentionality left then. So I don't think it's that easy. And I think it's always, again, about balance and finding a way to do this experimentation in a sustainable and intentional way. So here I have an example from my life and my channel. I know my life works with 3 sweaters, but I think I'm gonna end up having 10 sweaters in a few weeks. And 10 sweaters, if you think about it, of course it's more than I need, but other people with a 33 item wardrobe also have 10 sweaters or have like 10 tops that are like long sleeves. So that's initially what I call a sweater. And so I think it's still like a normal amount to have, or even when you have a minimalist wardrobe, you can have 10 sweaters. Now I still get comments, and I remember one in particular saying that if I have 10 sweaters, even though my life works on 3, then that's not intentional consumption anymore. And it's a lie, and it's kind of, you know, I don't know, doing it wrong. And I understand that if you look at it from a point of what I need. I need 3 sweaters, and now I'm going to have 10. Well, here I am in a new sweater, but I need to explain it a bit better. So what I wanted to say is that I think it also comes down to how you're consuming, if it's still intentional or not. For the 2 sweaters I brought back into my life last month, I had those at home. Those were sweaters that I decluttered before and thought that I want to bring it to a clothing swap or just somehow get them out of the house. And so bringing them back in has absolutely no impact on an environmental way. It's more so the best solution, because I can make sure that I'm actually going to get use out of them, that they actually are being used in the future. The same goes again for secondhand shopping, or this sweater, for example, I got from Colorful Standard, a sustainable brand, and I'm going to link you a code down below to check it out. And so depending on how you consume, it can still be intentional. And I think what's always important to keep in mind is just the number of things you buy and consume. And for me, it's about 1 item a month that I buy. And so I think no matter if I decide to buy 12 sweaters a year, because every single item I buy is a sweater, by keeping the number itself low and by making sure that the way I consume and the way I bring in things is aligned with my values, it can be intentional, even if it seems like I'm over-consuming to you in one area of my life. But I do think it's important to not only focus on needs, but to actually allow myself these wants as well. Because wants are also very psychological. And if you deny yourself of your wants for years and years in the name of minimalism or intentional consumption, then I do think that it might not be the healthy kind of minimalism, but it starts to become more so deprivation and some forced kind of environment where it's not about you living an intentional and happy life, but it's where it's about proving to yourself or to somebody else something. And I don't think your life succeeds or fails by the number of sweaters you own. Let's move on to the fifth point. So the fifth rule is also really, really important because of it kind of ensures that all the other rules and everything else you're doing to consume intentionally actually works out, and that you're actually aware of what you're doing and you're kind of like measuring the success of it. And that's, look at your consumption habits. Like, are you succeeding and are you consuming in the way you want to consume? So one way for me to measure that would be this one item I buy per month. And now again, I'm not that strict that I wouldn't allow myself to buy a second thing if I need a second thing a month. So it would be okay if I have to buy 10 things if I need those. But to just see after a year that it's actually been something between, 10 and 15 things that I bought tells me that the number I gave myself and the rules I gave myself and, everything I thought I should do actually kind of worked out. That is what I do for myself. But for you, it might be different depending on where your life is right now, how your life is changing right now, the kind of lifestyle you have, or what you're measuring. If you're measuring what you buy for your whole family, if you're measuring what you buy only for yourself, if you live with your parents still, it might be different. It might be 5 items a month. It might be only 5 a year. And so I don't want to tell you how to do it. It also does not have to be a number at all. You can count the fast fashion items you buy, even though you didn't want to buy any fast fashion, and say, up to 3 a year is still okay because it's so much better than it was in the past. You could also budget for yourself and make sure you don't spend over a certain amount per month, per week, per year on yourself or in certain categories. That is absolutely up to you, and it has to be like for your life. So I think everybody has to make these rules for themselves because they have to work in your life, and your life is of course different from mine. But I think it does help to somehow monitor it a little bit. You don't have to write it down, you don't have to count it, but to kind of just, see if it has been working. And so this fifth rule really helps long term, because I do think intentional consumption is of course a journey as well, and it's not about doing it perfect the first try. It's just a great tool to make sure to live a bit more intentional, a bit more sustainable, a bit more minimal. And so it's something that I'm happy to have in my life and that I continue to strive towards intentional consumption. And I hope you found something valuable in this video as well. And if you have more tips on how to consume intentionally, please leave them down below in the comments, as well as questions and other things you want to tell me or other people that are watching this video. And now I'm actually gonna link you a video that talks more so about how to use this tool of making a list and waiting before you buy something. So that is here. I hope you will check it out, and I hope you will find it helpful. I also hope I'll see you there right now. And otherwise, I hope I see you in my next video next week. Bye!